Ronan, I've decided that you need to sing us a theme song.
Sing a theme song.
Yes, we need a theme song for this, and we don't have one prepared.
Okay.
So we're just going to have you just like drop some mad beats right here, right now, and that'll be the theme song.
Okay.
So go.
My name's Ronan. His name's Kirks. We're on a rectangle table
If you say jerk right now, you're
I
walking
wasn't
home.
going to.
Okay, continue.
I was going to get we're on a rectangle table talking about the reels.
You rhymed Kirk all around us. Reels? Interesting. Interesting.
I'm not a rapper.
No,
I'm not a rapper.
I can see that. I can see that. You might be the only person on the planet whiter than I am, as a matter of fact. So, yeah. Cool. So how you doing? We are live on both my Facebook and your YouTube, just so that people can kind of join and take a listen. What are we doing today?
We're talking to ourselves and to you guys.
I mean, we're actually redefining what a podcast is. It's talking. Tell me more. Okay.
We're sitting here talking to each other and to the crowd.
About
people.
What? What will we be talking about today?
We're talking about Gleaming the Cube.
Gleaming the Cube. What a fascinating sounding film. Tell me more about it.
So, Gleaming the Cube actually not really does have anything that that was a terribly formed sentence.
God bless the education system.
Common Core, am I right?
Yeah, no kidding.
But it doesn't really have anything to do with cubes
at all.
Anything
or gleaming, for the record.
Yeah. Has something to do with but
yeah, I mean, there's certainly an article in there. Yeah. No, Gleaming the Cube. So for those who are unfamiliar, Gleaming the Cube is a 1988-1989 Christian Slater movie, kind of at the height / early leading edge of his career. He had already done Pump Up the Volume. He had not done yet Cuffs, but he was kind of at the height of his like 80s popularity. Heathers was just coming up It was, and Christian Slater did this movie in 1988-89. Tony Hawk was in it playing a tertiary character named Buddy. It's a terrible movie. Like, I mean,
there's worse movies out there.
Wait, Blaine, anyway, so someone came in and said, Blaine came and said, Gleaming the Cube was made near my city. So you're from Orange County, California, or did they shoot that somewhere else? Because it takes place
in Orange
County. You met Tony? Really?
Oh,
see, this is the perfect person to have in the chat today. Yeah. So we're talking Gleaming the Cube. Now, I was raised on this movie. I loved it as a kid. I absolutely loved it. And a few weeks ago on my normal podcast, Release the Creative, we were talking about it because I started skateboarding at 38. You can't really see, but I'm tore up.
It's okay, Kirk. I got some too.
Yeah.
Except not for skateboarding. And
it was filmed in San Pedro. That's awesome. So a few weeks ago, we were talking about it. We were talking about it on my main podcast about the not the filming, but the concept of Gleaming the Cube. And I decided that I was going to make Ronan watch it. And I found out that the film was out of print. It's hard to find. I had to find a bootlegged copy off eBay to make him watch. So with the exception of our friend Blaine, most people I anticipate aren't going to be able to watch it. Because it's very hard to find. I had to buy a bootleg off eBay.
And since I already know you're going to ask this question, I have actually seen some 80s films before.
Okay, so those who are new to the show need to understand something. Almost exactly, Ronan was born 20 years after I was. So we have a lot in common. We have lots of very similar sense of humor and everything. He works for me here, but we have a 20-year age gap.
Yeah.
So when I'll start talking about things that to me are just super standard, he'll be like,
common knowledge. Yeah.
Nothing makes me feel older than this. Anyway. So what other 80s movies have you watched?
Princess Bride.
That counts.
And Labyrinth.
That counts. Is that it?
Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head.
Back to the Future.
I've seen that one. Yep.
Ghostbusters.
Yep. Of course. Yeah. Of course.
Okay. Those are Indiana Jones.
Of course. Yeah.
Star Wars. Those are more early 80s, but okay. So the big ones. I'm trying to think of any other. Footloose.
Jurassic Park.
90s. My daughter is in the other room. That is a 90s movie.
She said Jurassic Park.
She said Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Anyways,
what did I just say? I don't remember.
You said Star Wars.
No, after Star Wars. Footloose.
No.
Have you heard of Footloose?
No.
This is what I am dealing with. You have never heard of the movie Footloose that they remade 4 years ago.
No.
Mr. Bacon, if you're watching, I'm sorry. Sorry. That's just so confusing to me. Footloose is like, it's not a good movie, don't get me wrong, but it's a pretty cult classic, like pretty seminal picture for its generation. But okay. So tell me about Gleaming the Cube. Like, I made you watch it. Walk me through. I'm of course going to come in and chime in, but like I made you watch a Christian Slater, Tony Hawk film from 20 years before you were born, 15 years before you were born, and you're not a skateboarder.
No.
What'd you think?
I used to skateboard. I used to skateboard.
Everyone at some point used to skateboard.
Yep. Before we do that, actually, let's talk about.
Let's do it.
So, director Graham
Clifford.
Yep. Birkin Wills Francis, and editor of the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Interesting.
Also, have seen that.
That doesn't count, but continue.
Yeah, I don't think that's 80s.
It's 70s.
Yeah. And then also editor of Don't Look Now.
And then the writer Michael Tolkien, the player Deep Impact, Escape from Dannemora, and Changing Lanes. Changing Lanes is another good film noir that you might like. It's a neo noir with Ben Affleck and Samuel L. Jackson. It's very good.
Maybe we'll have to watch that one. And then, as you said, Christian Slater, Archer, Mr. Robot.
We've really got to talk about your choosing paradigm. Like, I truly, of Christian Slater, you chose that he wasn't a voice actor on Archer as your number one. That's Christian Slater's contribution. Okay, Mr. Robot, I'll give you. For the record, that should have been the actual number one. And True Romance, but Archer. Cool.
To be fair, I know him a lot more because of his voice acting.
What else has he done other than Archer?
Milo Murphy's Law, which is kind of like Phineas and Ferb.
Salem, would you like to come join the show? I'm dead serious. You can come join the show. Okay. So
then Stephen Bauer.
Al Lucero. He was the cop, right? Oh, he was in Traffic.
Yep.
And
which is another movie we watched here on the show.
And he's in Scarface and Primal Fear. Interesting. All three of those noir. And this film, as we were saying, this movie it pretends to be a skateboarding movie, but it's a film noir wrapped up in a skateboard film, which makes me love it so much. Richard Hurd, Ed Lawndale,
Get Out, The Mule, all the peasants.
He was in Get Out. Have you seen Get Out?
Not yet. No. I was debating on
Mr.
it.
Peel. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Latuan, Colonel Track, Above the Law, Uncommon Valley, and The Girl Who Came Between Them.
Valor.
Valor. That's what I said.
You said Valley.
Hey, you don't have Tony Hawk up here, but whatever.
I mean, I put like the main characters.
That's fine. You're forgiven.
I was very much tempted to put him on there, but yeah.
You're forgiven. You're forgiven. Next slide. Hit me up. Okay. So we've got a pretty good middle of the tier cast for the 80s. This was this movie, I will say, I love it. I need to say that up front. I love it. It is so bad. It is so bad. I love film noir. It's fun. It's an interesting dynamic. As you pointed out when we talked about it before the show, you're like, if he had any other hobby other than skateboarding, it would have been a completely the exact same movie. The skateboarding.
Like he could have been a baseball player.
He could have been anything.
Yeah.
Like anything. The skateboarding. He had to be a rebel. He had to be like fix up vintage cars. He had to do something because the whole idea was that he was
like an outcast.
An outcast.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, he goes and hits on his brother's girlfriend. First off, ew.
Right? Yeah.
Second off, and she's like, no, you're gross. So he takes a shower, puts on a button-up shirt, and she's like, you're so dreamy. And I'm like, the 80s, man, the writing was so simple. He literally pumps up the tire on his mountain bike, takes a shower, takes out his earring, and puts on a clean shirt. And she's like, you're the man for me, even though you're my dead boyfriend's brother.
I was also going to point out the character development in this film too.
Okay, let's talk about the character development.
How he practically takes a 180.
Absolutely.
And I don't really see that in other films that much. Like
not
like
outside of the 80s,
drastic.
no.
As drastic.
I mean, the whole get better in a montage thing is a thing, but that is more. This is literally, he's like, I'm going to solve my brother's murder. No, you're not. You're a punk kid. No, I'm not. I'm gonna go and sweet talk his girlfriend. And so he goes and sweet talk. She's like, "Come on, Brian, you're a loser." And then he tears his posters down, takes a shower, takes out his earring, puts on a polo shirt, and now he's the man for her. And I'm just like,
yep.
God bless the 80s. It was a simpler time. It was a simpler time.
Yeah.
It played in zero theaters. Really? Is that true?
Really?
It doesn't surprise me per se.
Well, that would also explain the we'll get to that later because I want to keep it a surprise for you.
Okay. So then I rewatched it today. You watched it yesterday. I watched it this afternoon.
Yep.
And I will say that the main Vietnamese bad guy, good guy, the girlfriend's father, he dies.
The stop on it? Yeah.
Yeah, he dies. Spoiler. He gets shot, dead. At the end, he's like, "Did your father pull through?" And she's like, and he's like, "I'm so sorry." The thing is that usually in a movie, when someone says, "I'm so sorry," it's like, "Why? You didn't kill him." Except in this case, because he did.
Yeah.
Had Christian Slater not gone all like Dirty Harry, the father would not be like, the only reason the father got dead is because Christian Slater came crashing through the window. Yeah. Had he like done what anybody said, like, "Hey man, just stay out of it. Let the cops," like that man would have gone to prison for being crooked, but he would not be dead. This is one of those movies where Christian Slater added no substantive value. Not just like the Indiana Jones thing where like it would have gone the same. Yeah. No. He made it worse across the board. It's such a bad movie that I love dearly. Continue.
Going off of like the not a skateboard movie
not
whatsoever
a skateboard movie at all. Yeah.
The only part where like the main like skateboarding thing happens is at the end where the like the main bad guy just gets destroyed by the skateboard.
Right. Like there's skating in the first 10 minutes. There's skating in the climax. That is it. It is, I will say, my favorite hero shot in cinema history. Like the hero shot. I have a weakness for the hero shot in all its many forms. But the Tony Hawk driving a Pizza Hut, red roof Toyota over the hill with an army of skateboarders might be the absolute best application of that in history. It's great.
I mean, like the other shots, like the climax of the movie, the beginning could have been like different hobbies. Could have been
he could have been a gymnast.
Yeah, like, just doing front flips down the road.
Like he could have been Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad and cooking meth. Like this movie did, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not trashing on the fact that it was a skateboard movie. I love that it was a skateboard movie. I'm just like, it was such a like, we need to do something young and hip. What about a murder mystery? Oh, no, kids don't like murder mysteries. Well, put them on skateboards. Welcome to 1988. Like, oh,
true.
I honestly am semi-convinced that's how that went down.
Yeah.
I'm fairly convinced that there was some degree of like, how do we sell this to children?
It's like, oh, Tony Hawk's popular.
Tony Hawkins, like, we'll put Tony Hawk in it. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would Tony Hawk be in a murder mystery? Right? We'll put him on a skateboard. Does he even know how to act? We'll put that good kid, Christian Slater. Does Christian Slater know how to skate? Of course not. Which brings me to our first clip. I need to show this. Play this for us. Throughout this movie, the body doubles are so atrocious because Christian Slater is the only non-skater. They got all these other skaters. So anytime it cuts to Christian Slater skating, it's a person who is 2 inches shorter, 40 pounds heavier, and wearing a giant Christian Slater wig. Like, it doesn't. And they skate in 2 scenes, of which this is one. And the other is the climax of the film. Yep. But the movie is a murder mystery set against the Vietnamese mafia. And they are hiding it as a skateboarding movie.
It's weird. It's weird.
I love this movie so much. It's so bad. But yeah, there's Christian Slater and okay. What scenes did you pull to put into it?
So another one that I put in, and this one poses a question for you and the audience.
And the audience, okay.
Yep. Which is this one right here.
Oh, yes, interesting. So this is the scene where he is breaking into his brother, now deceased. His
This is
his brother is very much dead by this scene.
I didn't know which one I chose, if I chose the brothers or Christian Slater's.
Oh yeah, because they both break in.
Yeah.
So the brother, Brian, Christian Slater, is trying to solve his brother's murder. So he has broken into the same warehouse where they're smuggling the guns to find it. And as you can see from this slightly gradiated black box behind us, it's pitch black.
Pitch black.
Now, I will tell you that what they were trying to do here is that this is a low res compression, so it probably wasn't as bad in real life. Probably.
Yeah.
But film noir is hallmarked by deep shadows, and this was supposed to be a sneaky scene, so they were trying really hard to make it really dark, and mission's successful.
They did, yeah.
Like, there's zero detail. Now, again, this was a bootlegged copy of an SD 20-year-old. Like, lots of detail could be lost here, but I agree with you that this is a particularly gloomy edit.
And the question I was going to pose to you in the audience, is how dark is too dark? Like, would that be too dark, or do you like it that dark? Would you like it a little bit lighter, but that would make more grain?
There's no good answer for those questions. Anytime. The answer is, if it can be justified and defended, then it wasn't the wrong decision. Like, there are a lot of times they're like, yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way. Right. But that they made a different decision. They didn't make a mistake. Do I think this is a little too dark? Not in the context of this film in this application.
Yeah.
If they shot the whole film like this, yes. Yes, it would be.
Yeah.
But again, if it can be defended and justified, meh. I will say that it does stand out because it was shot and takes place in Southern California and is relatively high key and bright. These two scenes do stand out as being particularly glum.
And what I will say for my answer is I actually kind of like how it's that dark, because it gets you like immersed in it, because he is in like a storage facility after hours, so like none of the lights should be on,
and that's exactly what I mean. It is both justified and defensible, whereas if this was the My Little Ponies movie, that'd be like, weird choice, bro. Weird choice.
I mean, it feels like a little bit lighter, but there's like, you had to put like some grain into it. I still think I would have kept it at this darkness.
No, I do like this. And again, I love this era of filmmaking. I really do. I was just talking to someone, and I'd love some audience feedback, whether you're watching live now or you see this later. I'd love to hear some audience feedback on this. I have an interesting theory that I talk about all the time of now, for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to put a pin in the MCU. We are putting a pin in the MCU, and there's a reason. There is a reason, because it kind of doesn't count, and I'll get to that. But if you put a pin in the MCU, the 80s was a very interesting time, because it was the only time in history, super asterisks, where movies really could be for the whole family in a very, very Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Gleaming, the Cube. They were made to have something for the whole family, and they did so in a way that was very, very interesting. As movies, as the cost of making movies went down and the quantity of movies went up, and then more movies that came out, we were able to fraction and niche and fraction, niche and fraction, niche, and go down to these micro interest films, which now a family film means there's going to be some talking animal of some kind. And it's either an R-rated movie for adults, or there's some form of talking animal. Parents are either going to see it with their kids, or they got to leave the kids at home to see a movie which was good. And again, I'm speaking in generalities just because of the format and the conversation. But are there many movies that you growing up, you at 10, you at 12, you at 15, in your lifetime? Because I was a kid in the 80s when I went to movies with my whole family all the time, and I came home Indiana Jones, and I came home Luke Skywalker, and I came home from Marty McFly. I came home with my dad talking about it, and I came home with these films that the whole family loved. In your life, have you ever gone to a film that your little brother, your father, your mother, that can you think of? Not the MCU. The MCU does not count. Are movies being made multi-generationally from your perspective now? I was going to say the only thing I can think of that comes close to this is like how in some cartoons, how they make like the hidden messages. Right. And that's not new.
Yeah.
That's not new. I remember when I was a kid, I was like 9 or 10, and I was watching the Flintstones from the 60s. So it's 20 years. It's a movie from this, and Fred Flintstone went in to get a loan from the bank, and they were like, "Do you hear that? Rubber check Flintstone wants a loan." And at 8 years old, I was like, "What do you mean rubber check Flintstone?" My mom was like, "Oh, it means he bounces checks." I was like, "I don't know what that means." And my mom had to explain.
Yeah.
Putting in jokes for the parents, that's not new. People are like, "Oh my gosh, it's so great that Toy Story 1 through 4 does that." There are all these jokes for the parents. They're so witty. Don't get me started on how much I don't like Pixar. Like very much at all, for the record. But I love Gleaming the Cube because it's a terrible example of this. This is I'm not talking about this, but it's a film noir.
How you have like the thriller, you have the skateboarding.
It's a thriller. Again, it was done terribly.
Yeah.
But when we talk about Star Wars, we get caught up in all the nuance. We talk about Indiana Jones, we can talk about the nuance. When we talk about all of Ghostbusters, we can talk about the nuance. Ninja Turtles. When we talk about these other films, we can get caught up into the goodness of it. Gleaming the Cube was a great example because of how badly they did. Because we can Blaine, you're absolutely right. Innuendos are always hidden in cartoons because it's the wink at the parents, like and so really this film was because there was adoption, like they had a Vietnamese adopted kid who gets killed by the Vietnamese mafia. You have mafiosos, you have sex, you have drugs, you have rock and roll without sex, without drugs or rock and roll. You have a full-fledged film noir thing set across the protagonist being skateboard punks, but still it involved older kids. Most of the speaking characters were boomers. Most of that aren't Brian. Most of them were either
their parents
or
the villains,
and they talked about serving in the Korean War and the Vietnam, and they talk about it was very much aimed at the sensibilities of parents and having difficult children. It was this interesting attempt. It failed. It had an interesting attempt at telling a story, a murder mystery crime drama aimed at kids, but not really, aimed at parents, but not really, fun for the whole family. And it's interesting that I don't think we even try that anymore. The MCU doesn't count.
Yeah.
And if anyone cares why the MCU doesn't count, I can explain, but the MCU doesn't count.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot. So I'm going to pull up his comment on the screen. Blaine says, I think a lot of TV shows are family set. For instance, The Mandalorian, I see whole families talking about that. That is an amazingly good point, that now the cost of movie, maybe that's a thing. Maybe the cost of movies, now families are enjoying television shows as a whole. So shows are aimed, because you're right. Now I would say that The Mandalorian is part of the Star Wars universe, which is already is from, but I'm not trying to split hairs. That's a good point. Interestingly enough, though, at the exact same time, Star Trek, that used to be a family show, now does Picard, which is way gritty and it's not Picard and Discovery, which are very much more adult. I'm not saying they're inappropriate, but they're much more adult than any Star Trek was before it. And now they're doing Lower Decks, which is a cartoon. So whereas Star Wars, yes, did The Mandalorian, Star Trek bifurcated and went up and down. They're doing Discovery and Picard, very gritty, and Lower Decks, very just funny slapstick cartoon. It's they're polarizing and bifurcating. But I do, Blaine, I really like your comment there, because that might be a good point, is that are we aiming television shows more? And I don't know that that's true either, because I will say, she's about to scream something from the other room because she's listening. Finding TV shows. So I have 5 kids. I have 2 older ones, 12 and 13-year-olds in the other room. And and then what we call the triplets, which is twins and one that's a year older, and then they're 7 and 8. So finding a show that the triplets, my 2 older, and the parents can all watch and give any degree of damn is really difficult.
Yeah.
But like, I don't remember that being as much a problem when I was a kid. I remember watching, again, Back to the Future as a family, and all of us being like, here for it. And I'm just curious, is that a mind frame? Am I the grandpa? And this is a real question. Am I the old guy sitting across from me? Back in my day, films were great. None of this punk shit that you kids are doing these days. Like, is that the vibe I'm putting off? Because I don't feel like I'm doing that.
I was gonna say, I don't think so.
Okay.
I was trying to think of like the TV shows that I watch.
Yeah.
But like,
do you watch any with your parents, your mom or your dad?
Yes.
What do you watch?
But I don't know if I should be. It's
Hollywood Wives. No, sorry.
No. No, one of the new shows I was watching was The Invincibles or Invincible.
Which one's that?
It's like this anime or animated cartoon that has J.K. Simmons and Seth Rogen in it.
Okay.
But it's really bloody and like really terrible and inappropriate jokes.
So Blaine says, I don't know. I don't even think everyone has been into it, to be honest. I don't know what you're referring to because of the delay. I'm not sure where that comment popped up, but I love, because yeah, I mean, like I will say that my wife and I watched all of Gilmore Girls together, and we've watched it all with our older kids. The younger kids, I'd let them watch it. They just,
I mean, I guess it was like Full House. If we're thinking shows.
Yes, but that was when I was a kid.
That's true.
Full House went off the air when I was 12, man. Fuller House doesn't count.
I've never seen Fuller House.
It's not good.
I see. What's another? I mean, I watched The Walking Dead. I don't know if that counts or not. Or
it's not that is not aimed at. I would not let my children, any of them, even the older ones, watch Walking Dead. Sorry, Salem. So. Now, but this brings up an interesting other point. So my whole generation that I'm talking about, the 80s and the 90s being this era that things were still made for the whole family. Mm-hmm. And right now we're in the remake generation where we have Girl Meets World instead of Boy Meets World. We have Fuller House. We have all of these old sitcoms being rebooted because that was the era, this like nostalgia porn. And Wanda and Vision, they even kind of even kind of played off this by doing all this stuff that was like really, really iconically nostalgic. I wanted you to watch Gleaming the Cube because I made you spend a whole month and a half watching film noir.
Yep.
And this was one. And we've talked about movies from my generation, of which this is one. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of facilitate this conversation of movies aimed at your audience and my audience are very, very different. And I'm wondering if someone were to try to make, again, MCU doesn't count, if you were to try to make a general non-superhero movie, non-fanciful, non-insane, if you were to try to make a general fun for the whole family film, would that work for your generation? Or like your generation hates Facebook because it's for old people.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm not there seems to be so much generational divide right now that I don't really remember when I was a kid. I remember there was parents and kids. Now there's so much Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, like boomer, like there's so much division. Could a movie right now, could a story be generationally relevant?
I want to say so.
Okay. What would that take?
Well, the movie that comes to mind hasn't come out yet. It's still in post-production, I do believe. But I want to say it could work for the whole family.
Okay.
Free Guy.
I don't think so.
Or is that more for teenagers?
That's very much for the whole background is video games. The whole back, like,
sure, yeah.
Now, so Blaine, you just said, I wonder if it was a different time and place, generational thing. The ones that I named are classics. Now, yes, I did. You could. A serious argument could be made here, and please, if people at any point in the next week are watching this want to make this in the comments or whatever, I'm up for it. You could argue that what I'm saying is straight confirmation bias. That I'm picking the movies that prove my point and disregarding all the others, and that may or may not be true. I will also say though that like the PG-13 rating did not exist until Temple of Doom because movies were either for children, for adults, or meh. It's like. It was guidance, or so general audience, restricted, or parental guidance. Like, hey, ask your mom. Like, that was it. PG-13 didn't exist until we were watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and they're like, I mean, probably not. Like, it became this other thing. And that happened in the 80s, obviously. I am obsessed with storytelling and I'm obsessed with audience journeys. And it's interesting to me with social media and the hyper niche of communications and YouTube and TikToks and everything has allowed you to find content that speaks to your brand of mentality. And I'm wondering if that has done if that has parsed out communication and storytelling so finitely that telling a broader story to a whole family is even possible. Now, let me tag the MCU back in. But Kirk, there's 22 films in the MCU, and you keep saying those don't count. Why don't those count? Because they did a thing that has not been done before, nor been done again yet. And there are certain movies in the MCU that speak to different audiences, and then they lump in the appeal by having them have crossovers. Like Thor Ragnarok is a straight up comedy. Thor Ragnarok is a slapstick, Chris Farley, stupid comedy. Whereas Iron Man 3 is about a man having a mental breakdown. The way they make it work is that there actually are properties within the MCU that speak to diverse audiences that they tie up with crossovers to make it relevant across. Captain America speaks to boomers because it takes place it's a World War II hero. And, the reason the MCU doesn't count is that it is not a film. It is 22 films speaking to 10 different audiences, tying in people with cross references. And that makes it not fair. It's a totally different. Does it appeal to mass audiences? Yes, but it's cheating. I think it's awesome, but it doesn't count for the thesis of the conversation. It did so by being so it's everywhere. I
mean, like, even thinking back to, I was going to say my childhood. I mean, it's still happening, but I mean, like,
yes, you are still legally a child.
Yes.
Continue.
I mean, I've watched everything from like Happy Tree Friends when I was like very, very young to things like Army of Darkness. So, like,
both classics of cinema for the record. Both just utter classics. Okay.
So, I mean, I don't think I was really into taught or like shown like the like really G rated stuff. It was mainly just like stuff my dad and parents were watching.
Sure.
So
real quick, if I were to say it's a magical Leopleurodon, Charlie. Thank you, Salem. Would you know what I'm quoting? Charlie the Unicorn. It's a Leopleurodon, Charlie, a magical Leopleurodon.
No.
Sean, I really wish she'd come in and been on mic for that because that was funny. You guys didn't hear it.
Like the first thing I thought of when you said that was like, oh, that kind of sounds like Mario's accent.
No, no, it's my absolute favorite viral videos from the early days of viral videos. But anyway,
I see. Oh yeah.
So we're gonna wrap this up. It's been our half hour talking about Gleaming the Cube, and it is. I don't think we've answered any questions today, but I really have asked them.
Yeah.
I really want to have this conversation with some more people of. Could you tell a story right now that would have the same multi-generational appeal? Because like not even Star Wars, I will be really honest, not even the Star Wars movies made today appeal to the whole family like the Star Wars movies did in the 77 to 85. They just didn't. Now they appeal to Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
And not even many of those.
I was about to say a movie, but I already knew what you were going to say.
Yeah.
It was in the 80s. Because I was going to say The Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
That is I remember the day that I saw The Princess Bride. I was 7.
Mm-hmm.
I was 7 years old. I was living in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and Rainbow Bright was really big on amongst my female peers.
Okay.
And my brother came and said, "Hey, Kirk, come inside. We're watching a movie." I was like, "Oh, what movie?" I was like, "Oh, Princess Bride." And I heard Rainbow Bright because I heard Bright. I was like, "Oh, yeah. Princess Bright." Like, "Oh, Rainbow Bright." No, I don't want to come in and watch Rainbow Bright. And she's like, "No, not Rainbow Bright, Princess Bright." And I was like, "I don't want to watch Princess Bright either." Like, "No, Princess Bride." I'm like, "That doesn't make it better."
Yeah.
Like, what? No. And they're like, "No." And then I dressed in black and had a sword for weeks after that. I was 7. I was 7. My point being, like, yes, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
That the Princess Bride's a great example of it being the dead center of the time frame I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so Blaine, I would agree that Disney. So Disney came in. Blaine came in and said, "I think Disney films come close." And I would say that Disney tries really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch Disney. I would agree that is their goal, but I would say that their prime audience is children with their families. Their prime audience is not families. And there is from a communications person, that is what I do my day job. There's a big difference between your audience being children and their families and family films. Same thing with Pixar. Pixar, oh, those are films for the whole family. No, they are not. And I will fight you because I hate Pixar films with all that I have. but I do think that I will absolutely concede that is what Disney films are trying to do, and they are what come the closest, and Pixar is right there with them. But
so is there anything else that we should add about Gleaming the Cube before we go to the final slide?
It's terrible. If you can get a copy, check it out because it's just so much fun.
It's a movie you have to watch before you die.
Yeah, it's on the list, man. It's on the list. So what movie should we watch next week? Have we talked about this yet?
We have not. No.
So my wife had a suggestion.
Okay.
She recommended. Are you familiar with Lords of Dogtown?
Does not sound familiar, no.
So it was a movie that, in my opinion, to this day, is what robbed Heath Ledger of his Oscar. But Heath Ledger has an Oscar. Yes, he does. But it is a skateboard movie that takes place in 1977, 10 years earlier. But it really is about
skateboarding.
The Lords of Dogtown. They were more or less the people who invented skateboarding. And I'm not kidding when I say that. I mean, they literally invented it.
I see.
And they were called the Z Boys and the Lords of Dogtown. And Heath Ledger plays a character, the surf shop owner. And it is the most amazing performance by any human being I've ever seen. And he didn't win. He didn't get even nodded for it. But I think we should watch that next week because we just watched a 1988 skateboard movie. And we should transition that into, it's a period piece. It was made in 2007, 2006. But it's called, thank you, Blaine. You should join us every week. He said, man, Kirk, you are so my generation. I was born in 1982. So I don't like, I'm a Cancer, June 28th, 1982. But let's watch next week. Let's watch Lords of Dogtown. Heath Ledger, it's like I said, I think it's 2006, but it takes place in 1977. And we're specifically going to watch it. And we're going to be talking about transformational acting because Heath Ledger, who of course played the Joker and then died and then won the Oscar for it. There are two types of actors in this world. There's your Leonardo DiCaprio's, and then there's your character actors, your Giovanni Ribisi, and but every once in a while you get these people. For the record, Leo is one of them, so I shouldn't have used him as my first example. Who are transformational. Like Heath Ledger could sometimes be in Knight's Tale or 10 Things I Hate About You, both brilliant. And then also he could be Joker or this character in Lords of Dogtown where he is just unrecognizable. Christian Bale is a transformational actor where he plays a role and he just disappears into it. Yeah. So next week we're going to be talking about specifically through the guise of Lords of Dogtown, but we're going to be talking about transformational acting and people that have just disappeared into roles. It happens with historical characters a lot, which this one is. He's playing a real person.
Yeah. Okay.
1980, Blaine. Yep. So just rock on. So that's it. Next week. We do this every Tuesday at 6:30.
We have a final slide.
Oh, that's right. You told me there's a slide that I don't get to know what it is. So let's experience this together.
I mean, you know the slide, you just don't know the contents of said slide.
Let's see it.
Anyways, let's look at how bad this film did.
Oh,
so
that's right.
The budget was $10 million. How much did it generate, Kirk?
2.777. Someone lost their job over this shit. Wow.
Awards? Nada. Nominations? Nada. Ratings?
I'm surprised it got a 6.3 for the record. And a 29% on Rotten Tomato and a 40% on Metacritic. That's actually pretty high on Metacritic. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, to be fair, on IMDb's part, I think that's an audience score. Because on Rotten Tomatoes, their audience score was somewhere around like a 60%.
I will tell you, and we can do a whole episode over this. There's nothing I find less useful than the Rotten Tomatoes critic score. And I mean this. Listening to people, hey, Rotten Tomatoes, are you listening? Because my opinion matters here. Your algorithm is worthless. Audience score, rock on. I'm about it.
Yeah.
That is people gauging the movie. But there's nothing more worthless than the Rotten Tomato score. Absolute garbage. They're like, you get, what did the film critic from the New York Times say about this schlocky horror film? It was a schlocky horror film. Yes, but I would like to hear the opinion of people that like schlocky horror films too. The problem with Rotten Tomatoes is it gauges all movies across a rubric of quality, and that's not a fair thing to do. That doesn't work. If I'm going to talk to you about film noir, I want to know, okay, cool, is it Maltese Falcon good? Or is it Mod Squad good? And I'm talking to the New York Times, like, oh my gosh, it was... Films cannot be gauged against a standard. They have to be gauged against a type. And,
that is true, yeah.
And Rotten Tomatoes is garbage. But audience data is king. Anyway.
So yeah, you agree with any of those ratings?
I would... A 63 is about where I'd put it, which is to say it's failing. But like, I mean, this movie the climax is so terrible because like the guy dies because he intervenes. It's not like he saved the day. No, he made it 100% worse. But they were trying, and I believe in A's for effort. I do. We should grade on a curve, but so next week let's watch Lords of Dogtown. I think you're gonna like it. It is pre Tony Hawk. It is Tony Hawk would have been a small baby when the Lords of Dogtown were the Lords of Dogtown. Okay, guys. So this is Reels in the Round. I've been Kirk.
And I've been Ronan, as always.
And we will see you next week.